Hello friends, neighbors, and fellow VEDSies. It is day of VEDS. It's another safety video. Don't know when I'm going to upload it. So this past year, with us moving to our new area and getting our new house, my wife and I decided to get season tickets to the professional theater in this area. This is the first time I've actually gotten to see an entire theater season somewhere, and it was really fun, and I saw a lot of good shows that I wouldn't have gotten to see otherwise, and I'm going to talk about them in this video. There were 6 shows that we got to see in this season. Some of them were really enjoyable, some of them less so, and I'm going to give a brief review of each one here. The first show we saw was Finding Neverland, a stage musical based on the movie of the same name. The movie and the stage musical tells the story of J.M. Barrie and his life and his work and his relationship with a single mother and her young children, particularly a boy named Peter, and how this relationship eventually inspired him to write the play that would eventually make his career, Peter Pan. Finding Neverland is one of the few movies that has actually made me cry, and so I had pretty high expectations for this stage musical, and it definitely didn't disappoint. I very much enjoyed the music, and of course the story is incredibly moving and wonderful. And much like Peter Pan, it has a lot of innocent comedy, but it also has a fair amount of drama and thoughtfulness into it as well. It was exceptionally well done, and it was probably the best show in terms of quality that we saw. If you have an opportunity to see it, I definitely recommend it. It gets a worth seeing a professional production. The second play that we saw was Waitress. This musical tells the story of a waitress, someone who is exceptionally good at baking, especially pies, and has basically made her career in waitressing out of that. She's also in an exceptionally unhappy marriage, and she finds out at the beginning of the show that she is pregnant. Now, there's never any question that she's going to have the baby, but she doesn't want her child raised by her husband in really any way, and so she starts to make plans on how she can leave him. I did enjoy the music, and I mostly enjoyed the story, although the ending maybe didn't get across exactly what they wanted to get across for me. It was wrapped up a little bit too neatly for my taste, and it kind of gave the possibly unintended message that having a child will just solve all of your problems and give you everlasting happiness, which for people who either don't want or can't have children is maybe not the best message to give. But maybe it was just this particular production that didn't quite give off the right vibe, and so I'd be willing to give it another chance if I have the opportunity, and I'd give it a worth seeing an amateur production. Next we have School of Rock. School of Rock has music by Andrew Lloyd Webber, and I'm sure that most of you know my feelings about Andrew Lloyd Webber by now. For those of you who don't, I don't like him. But unlike a lot of his other well-known musicals, this one wasn't written entirely by Andrew Lloyd Webber. He basically just did the music. And that's fine. I mean, his music is fine. It's his other aspects of his stories that I don't care for. This musical is also based on a movie by the same name, a Jack Black comedy of all things. The Jack Black character is a musician in a band, and he gets kicked out of the band and has no means to pay rent, and so decides he's going to be a substitute teacher. Of course, he's not the least bit qualified to be a substitute teacher, but he is able to pass himself off as his roommate, who is. So yeah, definitely some morally questionable things in this story, but it's entertaining, it's fun, just go with it. So he ends up being a long-term sub for this class of elementary school students in this very prestigious private school, and he ends up teaching them all about rock and roll and forming his own band out of them, like you do. Again, it's a Jack Black comedy, and there are definitely aspects where when you start to think about them, they're not really that great, but in the end, it's fun. It's just fun, and it's especially fun if you are someone like me who enjoys music and enjoy listening to people geek out about music. Probably not for everybody, but it was an enjoyable time, and I would also give this one a worth seeing an amateur production. Next up, we have another musical that I have been looking forward to seeing, Chicago. Now, I should mention at the start of this that because we were season ticket holders, we got to sit in the same seats for all of the shows that we saw, but Chicago was the exception to this because Chicago was an add-on. So we didn't get our usual seats in the orchestra section, we got seats up in the balcony, and that may have made a difference because I was pretty underwhelmed by this musical. I don't know if it has something to do with the musical itself or the production that we watched or the fact that we were sitting up in the balcony, but it just really didn't meet with what my expectations were for this. I'd only seen the movie before, and I was really looking forward to seeing how they were going to take those elements of the movie where they kind of juxtapose the real-life events with the stage aspect of it, and how that translated from the stage version. And I kind of came away with the conclusion that this really works better as a movie. Like, they really didn't do anything clever with that aspect of the story. They just kind of set it all in front of this stage and expected us to make the transition between real life and the stage cabaret type thing. And maybe I was just spoiled by the movie. I don't know. Maybe I would have been able to suspend my disbelief a little bit more if I had not already seen the movie and how they did things. And maybe the director just didn't have a great imagination for this. And again, maybe I would have enjoyed it more had we been sitting in our usual seats in the orchestra section. But I didn't enjoy this one very well, and so I would give this one worth just see the movie. Next, we have a classic musical, The King and I by Rodgers and Hammerstein. Now, with classic musicals like The King and I, the direction you usually want to go is to try to put some sort of contemporary spin on it, or at the very least, put on a production that is just so good that you can't help but like it. Because a lot of the musicals that Rodgers and Hammerstein wrote are pretty dated by today's standards, but The King and I is actually one of the better ones. And this was a really good production. It was lively, it was energetic, it was very, very enjoyable to watch. The characters all did a great job of portraying the characters that they were meant to portray. And I think they really captured the universality and the timelessness that is inherent in this story and used that to its fullest advantage, which was part of why I enjoyed it as much as I did. It also helps that they didn't have white people portraying the not white people in this musical, which is the sort of thing that, yeah. So that's definitely a plus, and I think this is one of the better Rodgers and Hammerstein musicals. I would give this one a worth seeing in professional production, if only because if you see an amateur production, you're probably gonna get in that awkward situation where you've got white people portraying non-white people. And also, it's just a good musical. And finally, the last musical that we saw, the one that I was probably the most looking forward to, Aladdin. Now, I have done Aladdin Jr. a couple of times from the musical director perspective of it, and I was really interested in seeing what the full version was going to be like. And this was another musical that was just fun. It was just a lot of fun. It was really well done. They took a lot of advantage of showmanship and comedy, and they did some really great things with the musical. Not all of the choices were the best. Like, Aladdin has a group of friends, which ended up being kind of superfluous. And they did that Disney thing where Aladdin's group of friends ends up getting together with Jasmine's group of servants and forming a relationship, and it's like, okay. They also didn't have Abu or carpet in the stage version, and I found myself really missing them. Like, when you look at the other Disney musicals, they really go to great lengths to make sure that the animated movie, the aspects that we really like about them, translate over to the stage. You know, things like the transformation scene in Beauty and the Beast, or the fact that it's a bunch of talking animals in The Lion King. These are things that it was very, very important for the directors of the musicals to, in some way, portray on the stage. And they always find really, really creative ways to do it, but it feels like they kind of shied away from that a little bit with Aladdin. Like, they didn't so much give us the Disney movie as they gave us their own kind of interpretation on the story, where Aladdin gets a group of friends instead of a monkey and a carpet, and Jasmine gets a group of servants instead of a tiger. The genie was great, though. The genie was fantastic. The genie didn't try to be Robin Williams in the least, and was just absolutely his own character, and was funny and impressive and just all around wonderful. It was still the definite showstopper of the show. So, in spite of a few reservations, I really did enjoy the stage version of Aladdin. Not as much as I've enjoyed the other Disney musicals that I've seen, but still definitely an enjoyable experience, and I would give this one a worth seeing in amateur production. But a really good amateur production, like an amateur production that actually has a budget behind it, would be good. And that's gonna do it for this video. Hope you enjoyed me talking about that, and maybe next year I'll talk about the season that we are going to be. I'm definitely going to talk about one of the shows that we're going to be seeing in the next season, because that show is Hamilton. I get to see Hamilton. Not till February, but I do get to see Hamilton. So, and until next time, friends, neighbors, and fellow VEDSies, see you tomorrow.